Hi there, in this video I just wanted to show how you can set up a material to pan along a cylinder, a cable actor, or a spline that we've just set up ourselves here. This is quite a sort of popular effect it's been used to great effect in Half-Life Alyx. I was just curious as to how to do it. Now this is very, very simple. It can get much more complex depending on what displacement maps you use or affecting the normal channel in the material. But let's have a look at the master material. This effect, particularly the displacement, requires the mesh to have enough vertices. So if we come back and look at here, these are just standard cylinders that have been stretched, and there's not much going on with those, particularly if I come into that material. So if we look here at these actors, and in the material instance, if I'm increasing the displacement, it's not actually doing anything in detail. This will make sense in a moment. If we look at this mesh, which is using the same material, this has got a lot more vertices to affect the displacement. So it's quite interesting that you can just use this as a vertex shader in effect to give you this sort of pulsing effect. Now in the master material itself, I'm using the generate band. Now this node is super powerful, just in terms of giving you some graduations, be they kind of sine wave graduations or harsh cutoff graduations, and then in the position to kind of tile them and have kind of different effect on how that works as a material, but also on your mesh. So yeah. So let's look and see what is going on here in terms of the master material. So I've got a texture coordinate node here that I've just set to 5, but I've got a multiplier here so that I can affect that in the material instance. So this generated band node, Matt Wadstein goes into great detail and explains each of these elements. So what I'll do is I'll add a link to that video there. And all I've done is pull out scalar parameters here. Let's swap those over. So there's 3 scalar parameters that just gives me and exposes those variables in the material instance. I've got a directional different switch, which is just a static ball parameter. Now that is important for when we're applying this material to an Unreal Engine cable actor, because the UVs are different. That will make sense in a moment. Compare scalar parameter again, and then I've just set, and this is where the kind of power comes in of giving that effect of something moving along. We are using a panner, and depending on the mesh, we're actually only using the Y coordinate, but I've set it both for X and Y because it makes a difference on the cable actor. So you can do that. You can just set it to 1 on both. Now, if you want to add displacement, then I'm using a vertex normal world space, a scalar parameter again as a exposed parameter so that I can affect that in the material instance, and that's just multiplying it and then multiplying the alpha information from that band to then affect the displacement. So have a screen grab of that, and it's very simple to set up. Coming back to our main material, let's have a look at how some of this starts getting affected when, let me make sure I've got the right one, because I've got 2 set up here. So this is a spline that I've just set up. So here we can, it's a spline actor that I can add new splines to. I'll show you how to do that in another video. So if we come to the material instance and start playing with some of these exposed parameters. Now this isn't a super high resolution mesh, so the higher poly count, the smoother the animations will be. So this is just to really demonstrate what you can do. So now I'm affecting the graduation, but because that graduation is also being used to affect the displacement, it's now giving us a whole host of slightly bizarre and surreal results. This is just to kind of show what's driving each of these. We can then obviously have to come in and use our discretion. Super stylized in that result. We have sharpness here, which gives us, and because we're affecting the contrast of the graduation, that is then in turn affecting the smoothness of the animation, because we're using that information to drive the displacement. So if I soften things out completely by affecting the width and making the compare 0.5, which means that it graduates in and out as opposed to and then soften that, you see we're getting a much smoother animation. I can soften it, make it even more subtle. And again, this is because here we've only got, we've only got a few vertices really in terms of the rings that make up the spline. The more detail, the smoother the animation. Unreal Engine under Place Actor has its own default cable actor, which is a lot of fun to play with. It has physics enabled, so as opposed to this being spline being static, but it absolutely still works in the same way. Now the only tweak that I had to make on that material was changing the direction. So here, for example, you can see I have got a different direction Boolean, which if we come back to this master material, you can see that that Boolean switch is set to false by default, which then means it works for the splines. But let me demonstrate what happens if I turn that off on a cable. I just save that and come back. Now you'll see that it's orientated wrong. It's animating, so it's doing it, but it's obviously sort of laterally as opposed to along. So let's have a look at this cable actor. I'll do a video on cable actor and all the settings at another time, but as I say, the only difference being this directional change here. So you can see when I toggle that on and off, it's shifting. But obviously this is the effect we want. Now if I put the compare back to 0, it does displace, so you can displace. Again, it's not a huge amount of vertices in the cable actor, but you can get some quite funny results playing around with that. So this is a very stylized effect, of course, but we can play around with some of the parameters to get something way more subtle. So, that now affecting the tile scale is beginning to smooth things out even further. And, we might not want the displacement at all. So it's just about a pulse running through the pipe. So it's fun to play with and see what effects you get. There's a lot. You can actually change the direction as well, I think, if you change the tile scale. So yeah, we can get it coming the other way. Of course, we can... What happened to subtle? What happened to subtle? Subtle. Oh, look, we've got higher contrast. So again, you know, that is affecting the displacement as well, as we'll see. It's suddenly a... You get the point. Oh, look, that's rather interesting. Anyway, you get the point. Oh, well, there you go. Or you could just use it purely to fade something up and down. You don't need to animate it at all. Because we've stretched it out so far, but the speed is quick. And not forgetting that this is a cable actor, so all of this is entirely dynamic with it. So now I'm regretting that there aren't enough vertices, because that would be super smoothed out. Yeah, so that's weird, it's different pacing. Whoa. What's going on there? Anyway, enough of that. So hopefully that's of use. If these videos are giving you some value, then please do like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. So thank you for your support.